బయటికి బహిర్భూమికి వెళ్ళకోకుండా బహిర్భూమిని కూడా ఆక్రమించారు, శ్మశానాలను ఆక్రమించారు. అన్నదమ్ములు చేసి అకృత్యాలకు అంతలేదు. దరిదాపు 2000 ఎకరాల భూమిని కబ్జా చేసి దళితులకు భూమి లేకోకుండా, అక్కడ ఉండటానికి ఇళ్లు లేకోకుండా ఇళ్లు కూడా పీగించడం అనేది నరహంతకమైన పనులు చేస్తున్నారు అక్కడ.
Yeah, this is a case of land alienation and a combination of 7 atrocities perpetrated against Dalits by the same accused belongs to the same police station. 7 atrocities cases was registered against the same perpetrator. Still he is roaming in the same village. So the investigating officers are trying to shield the accused at all levels. And the accused got the anticipatory bail in the High Court in 4 atrocities cases. So this is the system, how the justice delivery systems are discriminated against the Dalits. That's what he is pointing out. And the honorable...
Please don't add anything from your side. Whatever he says,
it's the exact translation I'm doing. So the DSP, the investigating officer, is always trying to drag on the investigation. He is not yet completed. After 20 months, he has arrested the accused in 1 case out of 7 cases.
అతన్ని ఈ మధ్యన అరెస్ట్ చేశారు. అయితే పాము కళావతి అనే ఆమె భూమిని కబ్జా చేసి భర్తను సంపుతానని బెదిరించి వెంటబడితే భర్త వాళ్ళ చేతుల్లో సావడం ఎందుకని తనే ఆత్మహత్య చేసుకుని సరిపోయాడు.
In 1 case, he forcefully confined one woman of Pamu Kalavalati and sexually harassed her for more than 1.5 years and committed rape against her. So this atrocity is committed a person who is enjoying the equality against a person who is deprived of his equality. Means this is an offence committed by a person who is enjoying all privileges against a person who is deprived of privileges. There comes the aspect of Dalits. That's what he is pointing out.
యాళ్ల శిరోమణి 19 సంవత్సరాలు. ఈ అమ్మాయికి 2500 వాళ్ళ నాన్నగారికి అప్పించినందుకు బాకీ తీర్చమని బలవంతం చేసి ఆ అమ్మాయిని హైదరాబాద్ లో ఉన్న బొల్లా కాంప్లెక్స్ లో 6 నెలల పాటు నిర్బంధించి రూమ్ లో పెట్టి అత్యాచారం చేసి ఆమె గర్భిణీ తీయించుకోవడానికి డబ్బులిచ్చి గర్భిణీ తీయించుకుని మళ్లీ తమని ఒత్తిడి చేస్తే తన చనిపోయే పరిస్థితుల్లో మన సంఘాలు ఆదుకుని కేసు పెట్టడం జరిగింది.
So he has encroached more than 2,000 acres land, including the graveyard of Dalits and the place where the people used to defecate and abetment of suicide. He had committed more than 7 or 8 major atrocities till they have not get any justice from the justice delivery systems at all levels, including investigating officers.
With the permission of the Honorable Chairperson, how much was the land owned by non-Dalits and how much land was owned by Dalits which was encroached?
Out of the 2,000?
Out of 2,000 acres.
2,000 acres.
2000
How much land was owned by Dalits and how much by the others?
These 2,000 acres land belongs to Dalits. Yeah.
మొత్తం దళితులదే సార్. 2000 ఎకరాల్లో 1700 ఎకరాల దాకా దళితులు సార్. అది దళితులకి గవర్నమెంట్ 1970లో ఇచ్చింది. ఆ భూమి అసైన్ ల్యాండ్. ఇంకా 300 ఎకరాలు కూడా ఈ ఖమ్మం జిల్లా, వరంగల్ జిల్లాలో ఉన్న నకిలీ స్వాతంత్ర సమరయోధుల పట్టాలు పేర్ల పట్టాలు పుట్టించి వాడు 2000 ఎకరాలు కబ్జా చేశారు సార్. 2000 ఎకరాలు మనకి మన వాళ్ళని వలసలు పోనిచ్చి ఆ చేను చుట్టూ పెద్ద చెరువుతో వేయటం, ఇది ఎందుకు పనికిరాదు కాబట్టి యువత నుంచి పోవాలంటాం, వెళ్ళకపోతే కర్రించుకుని కొట్టడం ఇట్లాంటివి చేస్తున్నాడు సార్. వాడు బొల్లా రాధాకృష్ణ.
What he says is, thousands of acres were given on land assignment by the government to the all 1700.
10 villages. In 10 villages.
Yeah, then
Surrounding
200 acres were given to some so-called political suffrage by getting false certificates by the gentleman who is accused in this.
But now these cases which are mentioned here, they are against the reputation or against this man?
Against the same person.
No, let him say that.
They have.
Let him say. ఈ కేసు ఎవరి మీద పెట్టాడు?
ఈ కేసు
ఇప్పుడు కేసులు ఎవరి మీద?
మా మీద పెట్టాడు సార్.
మీ మీద పెట్టాడు.
తప్పుడు కేసులు మా మీద పెట్టాడు సార్.
దళితుల మీద మాత్రమేనా ఇంకొకరి మీద?
ఎవరి మీద లేదు సార్, దళితుల మీద.
All the false cases will be filed only against the scheduled caste and not anybody else. That's what he says.
No, 4 cases have been filed. SC Act and 304A. 4 cases. These 4 cases by him.
Yeah, same accused.
మీరు నాకు
By against those accused.
Yeah,
Those persons.
yeah.
మీరు వాళ్ళ మీద కేసు పెట్టారా?
పెట్టాను సార్.
ఎన్ని కేసులు?
7 కేసులు పెట్టాం సార్. ఒక కేసు రిజిస్ట్రేషన్ కాలేదని చెప్పాడు సార్ ఎస్ఐ. ఆ ఎస్ఐ కూడా మా మాట విన్నాడు సార్. అక్కడ పోలీస్ యంత్రాంగం మన వాళ్ళు కేసు పెడితే వాళ్ళ మీద మనం కేసు పెడితే మనం తీసుకుపోతారు సార్.
They were arrested also.
No, very late. Now just 1 week back. After 2 years.
ఎప్పుడు పెట్టారు మీరు కేసు?
This is prior to
సంవత్సరం అవుతుంది.
సంవత్సరం అవుతుందా? ఎప్పుడు అరెస్ట్ చేశారు?
మొన్న అరెస్ట్ చేశారు సార్.
మొన్న అరెస్ట్ చేశారు. తర్వాత బెయిల్ చేశారా?
The sum and substance of the
ఏమో సార్ తెలియదు సార్.
friends, the sum and substance of all the definitions before us is that there are false atrocities of the the Dalits in all, most of the Hyderabad, Rajasthan, we have heard from them, and then we need to have some introspection, and we have to can only ask and request the authorities that they must take some action, and they must give security in such like cases to the Dalits. Even the Dalits can approach the authority that suggested by Justice Ramaswamy also in another case. They can approach the courts, and of course, you can't say that the courts are not sensitized about these problems. We are already sensitized, and we are taking care of this. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Honorable judges, one word. I think that the organizers have asked NCDHR to bring these victims, not to say about the legality side of it, but the caste dimension is prevails. That is the only thing. Whether we have succeeded or not, I do not know, because welcome. Okay, thank you.
Colin and the Human Rights Organization Commission has succeeded in exposing, as he always succeeds in doing that, in exposing the wide gap between the expectations that the judicial system has generated and the small achievements that we have scored within the limited scope which we get when deciding an individual case in a particular factual scenario. It is not always open for any judicial officer to break the barriers of law or to lay down a new law. It is only a very small critical area where the judges can and certainly do make a difference. I am indeed very proud to be sitting with the real social workers who are working at the grassroots level. And all of us, I think I should thank the organizers on behalf of all the judges to make us come face to face with the victims of the system, with the seekers of justice, so that that impersonal atmosphere in which we have to work, where only advocates come before the court and argue their case as good as they can. The High Court judges hardly and rarely come across the faces of the actual victims or accused persons or the parties who are suffering. Therefore, it was indeed a good experience to be face to face with these the workers. And I am proud. I think it is also an achievement of the organizers that they have made the victims to sit on the dais and made the judges to hear their woes, I take it that they are not complaining. They only want to convey that the system is failing somewhere. Now that entire failure is not to be blamed on the judicial system. The blame lies at so many places. But there is still a small area where they do and they rightfully expect that the judges would make a difference. If that happens, it would be the complete success of this seminar. Having said that, I am told that the last session we should be very strict in our timing. Therefore, I would straight away request the first speaker, Mr. Dr. Prasad, who has been working for Sakshi, who is also an advocate involved in Dalit issues. I hope he will finish his discourse within 15 minutes and there will be some time for discussion on that. Mr. Prasad.
Sir JP.
I would respectfully suggest,
Yes, sir.
that first all the speakers speak, then thrown open for discussion. That would be ideal.
JP, Chair, my friend J.C. Martin, and the Honorable Judges. I congratulate the Human Rights Law Network to bringing all judges here to discuss on Dalit rights. In 2002, I happened to be in UN, Geneva, 2001, in the preparatory meetings, one of the preparatory meetings for WCAR, where various organizations, NCDHR, trying to figure the continuous discrimination that the Dalits are facing. The Indian government, at that time, the representative is our Socio-Legal, said very clearly that untouchability and atrocity is thing of past. In 2002, I also presented in the third discussions committee on elimination of racial discrimination, where the same Socio-Legal stated that India is very good in making laws, but implementation is zero. Still I remember his words. So let me start my presentation. My presentation is based on the last 6 years of the Sakshi monitoring on Dalit human rights violations in Andhra Pradesh. Let me start my presentation by narrating some of the incidents that happened in Andhra Pradesh. One, in Kurnool district. Kurnool district, it's a faction-ridden district in Rayalaseema region of Andhra Pradesh. In Kurnool district, in a village, Kambagiri is a Dalit law student who appeared final examination. He was the first student who entered into the college education in that village. The village is being practiced where should not happen anything without their permission in that village. The Kambagiri started organizing the poor people, not Dalits, not only the Dalits. He promoted Ambedkar Saving Society. Because of that, in front of the whole villages, nearly 2,000 people, he was killed in front of the villages, all the villages. When we went for the fact finding, even his mother and wife is not even there to cry. I can narrate these kind of a series of incidents that are happening on daily basis. This is mainly because of the wide prevalence of untouchability in the country. Next. This untouchability, learned judges know very well. but I quickly mention it's entrenched in the system. It's a daily, everyday, constant and routine discrimination that's facing. Whenever Dalits attempt to change this system, they are subjected to continuous attacks, murders, rapes, social boycott, arson. So we did a study in Andhra Pradesh by taking 3,300 villages on untouchability practices. We have undertaken to present this data to our one-man commission. Today morning, Justice Punagar also is presented. We did a survey. In those villages in Andhra Pradesh, nearly 154 forms of discriminations are prevailing till today. 154 forms. Definitely, I can say that that's not the exhaustive list. Let me give that some data, the extent of untouchability practices in Andhra Pradesh. 31% of the villages, less than 10% forms are prevailing. That means in 69% of the villages in Andhra Pradesh, more than 10 forms of untouchability are prevailing. We may take very comfortable position by saying that only 0.78% the villages are having more than 38 forms of untouchability practices. That's not the question, but 69% of the villages, more than 10 forms are prevailing in AP. Let me mention some of the discriminations which are prevailing in 70% of the villages, more than 70% of the villages. That's the segregation of fields, prohibit entry into the houses, forcible removal of carcasses, segregation in feast, told to wash their own plates. And the forms that prevail in 50 to 70% of the villages, denial of temple entry, prohibit to sitting on the Rachabanda, that's the village meeting place, standing up in respect of dominant caste people, forced services like excavation, prohibit to sit before the temples, like that. I can give the 154 forms like this, which are prevailing in Andhra Pradesh. Why I am saying it's 154? It's an untouchability, it's not mere touch-me-notism. Untouchability is deep rooted with the whole development process in India. Whenever the new development process is coming into the villages, that's existing into new types of discrimination in the villages. If the government provides assured education facilities in dry villages, the new form of discrimination of denying irrigation water to the Dalits are emerging. But in SC/ST Act, they named only 15 forms of discrimination. Since the legislation is not covering the forms of discrimination by name, what kind of approach that we need to adopt? When it comes to the atrocities, nearly 60% of the atrocities related to the developmental aspects. Either it is land, wages and employment, education, health, housing, credit, food. Nearly 60% of the atrocities are related to this. If you take the reasons for the atrocities, whenever Dalits attempt to use the legal recourse, Dalits are subjected to the murders. Whenever Dalits are said to access the right to land, right to livelihood aspects, they are subjected to the attacks, murders, rapes. Whenever Dalits attempts to utilize their right to vote, they are subjected to these kind of atrocities. Let me quickly come on to the implementation of the SC/ST Act in Andhra Pradesh. the volume of the cases, some of the cases only is fall under the scope of the Act. If you take the last 3 circuits, that only those 3 circuits only we are discussing now. When it comes to the registration of the case, cases not registered in 28.1% of the cases as not even registering in the police station. Only 17% of the cases are registering under proper sections. That means 83% of the cases are not registering under proper sections. If you take the registration of the case, most of the cases, as mentioned in the morning by the Martin in the discussion, nearly 65% of the cases are registering under only 3110. That's the simple section in the SCST Act. Around the 17.5% of the cases which are registered under proper sections, the charge sheets are filing only in 5% of the cases. That means 95% of the accused not even get into the steps of the court. If you take the time span in filing charge sheets, so nearly only in 9.3% of the cases, the charge sheet are filing within 30 days. If you consider even the IPC thing, that's the 19 days that has to be filed the charge sheet. Nearly the 67 and 71.5% of the cases, the charge sheets are filing after 90 days. We have so many of the cases which are not even filed even after 2 years. When we approach the courts, the learned magistrates are giving the directions that in the investigation agency, judiciary should not interfere. But under 173 CRPC that you all know, that charge sheet should file without unnecessary delay. This is the fate of the time frame that the investigation agency taking the filing charge sheet. Let me come to the cases in the special courts. This is the conviction rate, 3.3%. That is 96% of the cases are acquitted. Then what are the, if you take the, next, if you compare to the duration of the trial and the conviction rate, if the duration of the trial is less than 1 year, the conviction rate is higher. If you take the grounds for acquittance, most of the cases are acquitted in the lower courts on the ground that the accused not abused by the caste name at the time of offence. Even in the rape cases, even in the murder cases. Let me take one special court as an example in the Kannur district. In one judge, Jagannatha Rao, he acquitted 49 cases within a month out of 50. What are the grounds? When it comes to the murder, he'll say his ground is the murder, the offence is not committed on the ground of SCST, it's because of the political rebellion. If he tried the rape cases, the same. The offence is not committed on the ground of the SCST, on the ground to satisfy his lust. These are the grounds. That's the lower courts, special courts are taking into consideration to acquit the cases. Some of these things are some of the technical grounds they have mentioned. They are taken. The investigation not done by the competent authority. All the investigation officers know that about the rule 7. By knowing that he is taking up the investigation, that's whose fault? This when it comes to the High Court judgments quickly. These are we have taken the 78 High Court judgments that's pronounced in various courts in India. Nearly 74% of the cases, judgments are against the Dalits. The reasons, the grounds, so most of the grounds that came up in the morning discussions, that's the granting bail is violating Rule 21, Article 21, and the investigation not done by the competent authority. In one case, in rape case, if the lower court is convicted, you know the rate of the conviction rate. Even though given that low rate of the conviction rate, the lower court is convicted in that rape case. That's the in the case of Ramlinga Reddy versus State of Andhra Pradesh. But on this ground, technical ground, the judge quashed the whole petition, quashed the whole trial. So another ground, most of the ground is the crime is not committed on the ground of victim being SC/ST. And another important ground, that's the most of the judgments are coming against the Dalits, is the interpretation or the appreciation of the lower courts, mainly the public view and public places. Public view and public places. Let me take one case, that's the Karan Singh versus the State of Madhya Pradesh. The incident took at the time of 11 p.m. Lower court convicted, and when it comes to the appeal in the High Court, since the offence taken at the time of 11 p.m., it won't comes under the public view under the quash. In one case, the Sumana versus Endluri Asirvadam. The Endluri Asirvadam is assistant director in sericulture, and the victim is the clerk. He abused in his office and very derogatory words. She filed the case. The police registered the case. As usual, DSP in his investigation showed that it's a false case and it's closed. But the victim filed the private complaint. The lower court convicted, and the High Court, when it comes to the High Court, since the offence have taken place in the office, that's not comes under public view and public place. These are the interpretations that the judiciary is taking up, considering to acquit the cases. I conclude my presentation by quoting one paragraph that mentioned in the report of the Constitutional Review Committee. There is a misconception that the problem of the Schedule Caste and Schedule Tribe are marginal. In reality, these are the part of the central and core problems of the country. It is the failure to tackle their problems so as to remove their disabilities and secure their full potential for national development that lies at the root of many weaknesses faced by the post-independence India to this day. Therefore, these issues and remedial measures should be approached a critical and core concerns of India. Thank you very much.
Presents a presentation on violence against Dalit women. As it was suggested earlier, we are going to have all the three presentations and then all the questions together if you don't.
I just wanted to know whether these cases of acquittal were total acquittals or only acquittals under SC/ST Act. That's all. The acquittals he was talking about, they are total acquittals.
Yes, in the lower courts it's a total acquittal. In the high courts, some of the cases, nearly 70%.
All these cases you said were all total acquittals.
Yes.
That's all.
So good afternoon, and I'd like to first of all thank the National Human Rights Commission and the Human Rights Law Network for enabling me to take a brief 15 minutes of your time to share a little bit about one key issue that I feel faces Dalit women in the country today, that of violence or heinous crimes being committed against them. I'll try to be very brief. I only wish that some of the justices that were here in the morning could be here this afternoon, because I think the session just before lunch raised a lot of very interesting issues that we perhaps have not had time to discuss, and one especially about why do we talk about Dalits and violence? should we not be talking about crimes against women, crimes against poor people? And that issue I would very much like to address today, because I've been involved for the last year and a half in a study that has been looking at specifically violence against Dalit women. And one of the questions we also asked in this study is there any specificity to violence against Dalit women? Are they only being raped because they are women, or is there something specific that lends them vulnerable to violence? And I would say that when, as Justice Ramasamy suggested, when we look at violence, when we look at any crimes, as people that uphold the law, we have to take into account the worldview of not only the perpetrator, but also the victim, the survivor of violence. And it is by looking at that worldview that we can validate the claims of the people that stood up here this morning and shared their stories. We can validate their claims that because they were Dalits, because they were Dalit women, that's why they face this violence. So I've been involved for the last year and a half looking at a study examining various forms of violence, so all major forms of violence against Dalit women, but in both the public-private spheres, barring murder, because we wanted to be able to talk to the women and get their subjective understanding of violence and why this violence was taking place against them. And what we discovered is that violence is ubiquitous in the villages. There is a very culture of violence that I submit exists in the villages and towns across the country today. We took a very small sample, just 32 mandals, panchayat unions, blocks, 4 districts in each state, 4 states. Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu in the south, Bihar and UP in the north. And what we found is that women face multiple forms of violence. We looked at the last 5 years, asked them, in the last 5 years, what has been happening to you? Who has been perpetrating these crimes? And what have been your struggles for justice? And what we found is that the majority of women, physical attacks, verbal abuse, very much is habitual in the villages and towns. So we're talking about any kind of attack, often in very public places, to degrade these women and to bring them into line. And you can see by analysing the words that people use, and there's been a lot of discussion about Section 3110 of the SCST Act, about this verbal abuse. You look at the words that people use, you can understand the worldview of the perpetrator and why it is they are attacking women because they are Dalit women. Because you will see a lot of the words they use are very much what I call akin to what we call in international law hate speech. It is language that is very degrading. It is so sexually innuendoed, words that I can't speak out here in polite company, but words that very much link the fact that they are a Dalit and that they are a woman and are seen as sexually available. And so there's a lot of sexual violence, there's a lot of threats that say, who are you? How dare you say anything when you are a Dalit? And who am I? I have the power and authority in this village to decide who speaks out, who asks for their wages, when they get their wages, who gets land, who gets to enjoy education. So in that sense, there's violence that is happening across the board. Why do I say that it is specifically Dalit women and not just women that are facing this violence, and why we need to focus on Dalit and the SCST Act is because there is a very clear gender, class and caste nexus to this violence. It comes out very much in the words, it also comes out in this perceived powerlessness of women. That dominant caste status combined with dominant class status, so being a landlord, being a businessman, being a police official, that constitutes the power and authority to use force against Dalit women. And I can even quote from the National Commission for Women in 1996 has said in its report that in the commission of offences against SCs and STs, and specifically against SC women, the offender is trying to establish their authority and humiliate the community by subjecting these women to inhuman and degrading treatment, by raping them, some people said, well, rapes when it comes along the way, or a man sees someone and he rapes her. a lot of those cases you will hear before that, you will hear him, if he's in a lot of gang rapes, you'll hear him saying, here she is, this Chama woman, she's all alone, she's a widow, she's disabled, let's get her. So there's an acknowledgement that this woman is powerless in the village, this woman has no social status for us, and we can commit acts of crime with impunity. And that's what I mean when I say talk about availability, is that Dalit women not only are available, Dalit women should be available. They should be available for labor in our fields. They should be available for sexual intercourse whenever we want it. And combined with that is this notion of impunity. There's a huge amount of talk by accused, people that are accused of violence, that these women report. They report that these people say, who are you? What authority do you have? My people, in other words, my caste people, they're the ones in the courts. They're the ones in the police thanas or the police stations. They're the ones that will ensure that you cannot do anything against me for what I'm about to do to you. So broadly there are... Oh, okay. No, back. I mean, broadly... Go back one more. I mean, I'll go very quickly through this. There are four major categories or areas where we discovered that violence was taking place against Dalit women. One was in terms of them asserting their civil and political rights. So that is in terms of accessing their right to vote, trying to take part in panchayat elections. The other one was in terms of, for example, in terms of, for example, protesting against illicit arak. All those protests that women say, that say we're equal, we demand a right to say something, that gets suppressed through violence. Next one. Bored. Okay, next one is in terms of economic land rights, and this huge area of violence that takes place because Dalits try to access land, because they claim their right to government land that has been allotted to them. It's to prevent Dalit women participating in the cash economy. So it will be violence when they ask for wages. It will be violence when they ask for payment for goods, when dominant castes buy things from shops. So that is another big area where violence is taking place. Third is in terms of sexual integrity. And this is where a lot of the language that you hear in these cases, which may not come to court because the woman will be so ashamed to share that kind of language, but that language will very often say, you're a chama, you're a whatever your caste, and you're a woman, and you are available to me to be raped. If it's a landlord, it's you want work, you want your family to get work, well then you better submit to me. So that's what that huge area of sexual integrity and caste notions that Dalit women are sexually available for any high caste in the village. And finally is the right to equality and dignity. And by that I think is something that is very clearly, it's something that distinguishes Dalits from other caste communities, is that you have a large amount of violence being perpetrated because these women assert their right to be treated as equals. They stand in a ration shop queue, for example. A woman in Uttar Pradesh stood, she was 5 months pregnant. Everyone derided her, said, how dare you stand as a chama in the same queue as us? Who do you think you are? The ration shopkeeper turns around and he goes, why do you stand in the queue? You just come to my house late at night. I'll give you all the ration that you would like. They beat her up. As a result, her 5-month-old child or 5-month-old fetus was aborted. So that's what I mean in terms of that right to equality and how that is violated specifically. And the other thing is that in terms of accessibility, Dalit women are very much considered as accessible. Why? Because they go out to work, they will labor in the fields. Going to the toilet, going anywhere is seen in public spaces, is seen as a legitimate space for violence to take place. Not only that, within their homes as well. So violence does not, it does not take place just in public to humiliate that woman, to humiliate her community or punish her community. It's also violence taking place in her home herself, because often they don't have doors to their houses. You can just come in and pick up a woman and rape her at will. But finally, what I wanted to really focus on was then, for us, probably what we're more interested in is, well, what is the struggle for justice? Now, out of these 500 cases that we looked at, if you look at the area in purple, you're seeing that in 84% of these cases, no justice is being attained. And I'm not talking about even getting to the stage where the police file an FIR. This is cases that are not appearing before you. They're not appearing often before police for investigation because of what takes place. So there's this culture, what I call the culture of silence and impunity for violence against Dalit women. I'll go very, very briefly through that. For a large majority, 39% of these cases, you saw no legal redress was sought. That means that the woman was so ashamed, what some of these women shared, the feelings of such shame, especially when it comes to sexual violence, or that they do not want to speak out of this violence. But more importantly, I feel for us, is that a lot of these women say that they feel that they can get no justice through the law. And that, I think, tells us is an indication, because it makes one question, when the most marginalized citizens in this country feel that they cannot get justice through the rule of law, then it makes us question, what is the justice system for us? Because a lot of these women say, I know, if I go to the police, they will just ignore me, or they'll say, these Taco landlords are always doing this, so we can't do anything about it. Or they'll say, you stupid woman, you're a beggar woman, you're lying, you're making it up, you're besmirching the image of our Sarpanch. All those, they know already that the system is so weighted against them, which is where this culture of silence is very much prevalent amongst Dalit women. At the next level, very quickly, it's justice being swatted by at the community level, and that comes out through a lot of the threats, the use of the dominant caste panchayats or the local village panchayats that often do not mete out justice to these victims. So you often get perpetrators, they will threaten the woman, they'll threaten her sisters. A lot of rape cases where they go, you say something, I will rape your younger sister, so be quiet about this. You get a lot of violence in that way. You're getting recurring violence. There is one woman, Mamta Devi, in Bihar, in Jamui district, that's her. And she was raped. She's a girl, she was about 12 years old. Raped, this is one of the cases that we took up. When she went, her mother immediately tried to file a police case. The police went to her and said, we'll do something, don't worry, we'll come tonight and we'll arrest the perpetrator. Police, of course, did not come. That night, the perpetrator and several of his caste people, several Yadavs, got together, dragged this woman and her daughter, the girl who had been raped, to a nearby ravine in Bihar, and they gang raped both of them for about 18 hours. And they made the mother watch her daughter being gang raped and vice versa. And afterwards they said, now see what you want to do about justice. I very quickly then pass on to a lot in terms of police state actors. I think I won't say much more because we've already spoken a lot. A lot of the other speakers have spoken about what happens when it gets to the police. But I wanted to just mention that there's often a refusal to validate these women's experiences. And I think that's what we need to highlight when we're talking about police refusing to file FIRs, police refusing to investigate cases. They are refusing to validate these women's experiences of violence. And finally, I spend a little time in terms of where we had about 14% of cases. So we're looking at not just 500 cases, this is about just over 1,000 cases or incidents of violence. Only 14% of cases have come to the stage where some legal process is underway. So we're talking about 3% of incidents where cases are filed and police investigation is continuing. or where 1% where they've actually arrested the accused and he's still in custody. Because mind you, we're talking about in the last 5 years, so more recent incidents of violence. A lot of cases, 6% of these cases, a case is filed but the accused is released out on bail. And this is for all sorts of acts. It's acts for like rape, it's like very serious crimes, rapes, aggravated assaults, sexual exploitation. Accused is out on bail, and it's almost inevitably followed by threats to that woman victim, or to her family, to her community, the pressures that get put on her to compromise the case. And finally, what may be of interest for you is that I wish I could share more in terms of a judicial process and what Dalit women go through, but there are only 9 cases that have actually gone to court, or have actually been finalized by the court. 3 cases of convictions, 6 cases, victim witnesses or the victim turns hostile because it's been 2 or 3 years down the track. A lot of pressure has been put on her. You also have where a lot of the women brings us this whole idea of evidence, because a lot of these women cannot provide evidence. Often the police don't tell them that they have to go to a hospital after they've been raped and give their clothes to be examined. So in that way, again, this whole atmosphere of impunity is being reinforced. So I think I'll stop there. That's enough. My main thing I wanted to highlight is, through all these cases, very briefly, is that today in this country we have a disjuncture between the rule of law, which is what we are all here to uphold, and the rule of caste, what's called the rule of caste law. And if you look at these cases and what is happening, I'm afraid to say that it often looks like the rule of caste is prevailing over the rule of law in this country. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Ms. Jayashree. She has participated earlier in a campaign and lobbying at the UN Conference on Racism held in South Africa in 2001, and also at Asian Social Forum in Hyderabad. She is coordinating a national advocacy research study, and it is truly heartening that a young lady has put the others very poignantly before our judicial system about where and how the justice is required to be done. We often labor under a misconception that the untouchability and atrocities of women, etc., are happening only in rural India or in backward states, so-called backward states, or in southern states, or in Andhra and Orissa. One of the speakers now speaking has come from Gujarat, who prides itself on being one of the very advanced states. And we will hear from Mr. Martin McCwan the scenario that prevails in Gujarat. Mr. McCwan.
My friend on the dais and the dignitaries. I've been asked to focus more on the practice of manual scavenging in the country. Let me graphically just say 2 lines on what manual scavenging is. Most areas in rural society, they don't have proper toilets. The defecation is in open grounds, and there are people only from a caste within Dalits, the lowest, the Bangis or the Valmikis, and among them 95% women. They carry the human fecal matter in bamboo baskets or tin baskets, barely collect with the hands, and go and dispose it outside the village. This is one form of manual scavenging which is prevalent. Number 2, you have toilet in your home, properly built, but it is not connected to a drainage system. It is to a cesspool. And once the cesspool is full, you need human labor to go inside and clean it up. Number 3, the toilets that we see in our urban areas, which are toilets which connections to gutter system. The problem is, we believe that we flush toilets, it's all clean. But once it goes in the gutter, in the manholes, and when it is clogged, these Valmikis are used, they are lowered inside those manholes to clean it up. In Gujarat alone, on average, 22 to 25 people die every year because of inhaling carbon monoxide, a deadly poisonous gas that emanates from that. Because the gas is trapped under the garbage, it is smellless. And once you scrape it up, it comes, and before you realize you are gone. In Bombay, not the adults, but the children are lowered inside the manholes. And there was a public interest litigation filed in Bombay, I think by PUCL. And the court definitely issued notices to the state, and the state came and said, we are not responsible for this because we have given this to a contractor. So we have outsourced the work to a contractor, and therefore we are not responsible for this. How many people are involved into this? No figures are available, but the Planning Commission had an estimated figure of 1 million families. That was 5 years back. These are families. So in every family, you can say an average or 2 or 3 people who are doing this work. How do they live? What do they earn? 1931 was the first time Gandhi had described what scavenging is when he was in Bombay. When I wrote about the incidents and the living conditions of scavengers in Gujarat, you can literally see that there's nothing which has changed from 1931 to 1997. As usual, they live outside the village. Even within the Dalits, they are the untouchables. Nobody speaks to them, nobody touches them. When the children go to schools, the teachers sometimes say, or other students say, you sit at the back because you're dirty and you're smiling, and therefore children drop out from the schools. There are incidents where children have committed suicide in the schools because they can't take the humiliation from the teachers. First time in 1997, Now Surgeon, the organization I work with in Gujarat, had filed the first public interest litigation in the High Court of Gujarat. Justice R.A. Mehta was there. And unfortunately, the state government filed an affidavit under oath saying the practice does not exist in Gujarat. None other than the Chief Secretary of the state. He produced record in the court that the day they filed an affidavit, pre-state saying what steps we must take to get more grants from the central government to clean up this place. This denial maybe is the easiest way out, because I think I can understand it puts tremendous shame on every one of us to recognize that this exists today. I'm very happy that this seminar has been organized, because rarely it happens that the people from the judiciary and the activists ever have a chance to come together, because we are traveling on the same boat. We all of us are trying to ensure that, as Jesse has said, that this country cannot be ruled by caste but by constitution. Right now, there's a public interest litigation going in Supreme Court, because in Gujarat the government came and said, we will see to it that within 3 years this will be abolished. This is not the first promise. Before independence, in Punjab there was a law which made scavengers to do this work compulsorily, so they couldn't deny it. And there were penal provisions if they ever denied to do that work. Right now, there is no law, but there are social sanctions and practices. If you deny to do this work, there are severe consequences that happen even today in the villages. The situation is not much better in cities. Scavenging has many forms. It has to do mainly with the notion of untouchability, and you keep away from matters which are polluting and dirty. So if you take all the pathological laboratories today in the country and analyze who are the people who collect the urine and the fecal matter samples for biological tests, there will be only scavengers. You go to all maternity hospitals, and see who are the women who are employed to clean the labor rooms. There will be scavenger women. Or to watch surgical implants, there will be women. We go to all civil hospitals and look at the postmortem room. Who are the people who are handling corpses? They are the scavengers. So everything which is to do with pollution and belief that this is unclean, the scavengers are being used into services. Legally, we are on a very big ground, and that's my next point. Because this being a state subject, the central government never made a law, but receiving a request from more than 3 states, government enacted a law in 1997, the Employment of Manual Scavengers and Construction of Dry Latrines Prohibition Act. Subsequently, none of the states adopted the act. Gujarat became probably the first one after we filed a public interest litigation to adopt it in 1998. Then Andhra, Maharashtra, I think today 14 states have adopted the act. But all over the country, to my information, as of today, not a single case has been filed under this law, under this act. Because it's a conditional legislation. It says first, the law will come into force only when the state adopts it. And secondly, it does not give a right to complain to a private person. So I cannot go and file a complaint in the police station saying I'm doing this. I have to make a complaint to designated authority with the collector. And it's only a collector who can file a complaint. But if that authority, the law says that fails to file complaint within 90 days, then it is seized, lapsed. There is no offense. So not a single case is been filed today. We don't have to go very far to look at the reasons why the cases are not filed, because most of these scavengers today which are employed are by the state governments. The very government which has made the law is the largest employment agency of the manual scavengers. All panchayats, all Jilla Panchayat bodies, all government districts. Let's look at our own high courts, our session court. Who cleans the toilets? In our chambers, who cleans the toilets? Let's go and ask the caste of the person. This is utter violation of law in the presence of daylight. And yet, nothing happens to it. And therefore, one sees a lot of cynicism and a voice of anger among the activists. I think it is not to distress anybody, but a mere sense of frustration which is mounting in this country. Many people believe that, you go out of the country and you escape from the whole thing. So you take a flight and go to London. When you land on Heathrow Airport, find out who are the people who clean toilets. They are all Valmiki migrant laborers from Punjab. You go to Pakistan, 95% of the toilet cleaners are people who left behind the Hindus during the division of India and Pakistan. Because Pakistan made a special law and gave special protection because they were afraid that these people leave, we will die with epidemics. I think the shame part comes here is that we are saying that we want to go in 22nd century. We have high investments on info cities and mega cities, science exhibitions. We want to send a satellite, and we can't create toilets where people can live with dignity. Just imagine somebody being lowered, and you should come with me to the villages in the monsoon when women are carrying these nights around their heads from the bamboo baskets. It's all dribbling on their bodies and faces. And we call these are Indians, my brothers and sisters. I think it's not the question of this caste or that caste. Are we people who belong to this same nation? Is it a one nation? Or we say it's your people and my people. I think this is where the biggest challenge is, that we are not looking at the whole viewpoint of the nationalism. And first time, I think it was 15th October 1947. We gained independence in August, 2 months after independence. In Maharashtra, one MLA called Dr. Kalyani had raised the whole issue of abolition of manual scavenging in Maharashtra government. and brought a private member's bill. And the government said, okay, withdraw the bill, we'll bring a law. After that, 4 commissions have been set up by the Lok Sabha. Vyas Commission, Planning Commission started, Barve Commission, there's one more. Commissions have given recommendations. Nobody reads those recommendations. It is never tabled in the parliament. Nobody debates on it. After 10 years, say, oh, those were 10 years old, let's now appoint another commission and relook at the issue. And all these years, it is still going on. I think we have a very good film here, but it's a very long film. We made in Gujarat in 1997. It's a 58-minute film called Lesser Humans, which has won 2 international awards. It would have been too long to show, but anybody wants copies, I can always provide. I think I would just stop here and bring this whole thing is that where people can't live with dignity, does this become an issue of suo motu action? There will be a lot of suo motu actions by the High Court on stray cattles on the road. You know, when these are passing, they are blocked, the trees have fallen, etc., etc. Why this doesn't become a case of suo motu action? Where 1 million families are our own brothers and sisters, we call them Indians, living into these kind of conditions. And secondly, I think I want to bring about to the whole thing is the whole legal side, and there is where I think we need to test the whole thing. And I think I have come here, like, okay, we've been working for 25 years in the villages. I still keep on coming to this kind of forum. Every time you decide you don't want to come, enough of this talking, you are frustrated. And I said, let's go. Because in my own personal life, I've seen that public interest litigation, if used very effectively, takes a lot of consequences. In Gujarat, when we filed this petition, it forced the government to allocate 150 crores for rehabilitation. We took the whole issue of land alienation. It forced the government to give 6,000 acres of land to the poor people. I think we just wanted to come here and share this thing with our colleagues on the other side, and to see that we all can get together and, in the true spirit of nationalism, understand the whole issue of caste. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr.